G'day Bomber fans, the draft is coming up in under a month now, so there is going to be a lot of videos about it to come. I am a huge draft nerd. I like to think I know a lot about trades and whatnot, but I really do a lot to understand the draft pool. So today I'm going to go through each of our first 3 selections, picks 9, 31 and 35, and highlight the 4 players I would like us to draft with those selections, or players that I wouldn't mind us picking with them. Being realistic about it, of course, as well. Before I start though, if you have any video ideas revolving around the draft, any certain areas you want me to single out in a video or something, comment it down below. I am always down to make videos based on what you guys want to see, and when it comes to the draft, the more videos the merrier. Alright, so pick 9, which is going to turn into pick 11 through matched academy bids. The first player I have is Caddy, but realistically he is going to be gone by the time our first selection comes about. He is a top 10 player for sure. I will talk about him in case anyway though. There's always a small chance, you never know what teams are thinking. He is an undersized key forward option, more of a third key, not like Langford though. He is far more mobile and impacts the game around the ground as well. He has had some bonkers games in the Talent League, had 25 touches and 6 goals in one of them. He has a really good overhead mark, really quick on his feet as well for his size. He has decent strength despite being a tad on the leaner side. I think he's a really dangerous player. He's too tall and good in the air for a general defender to play on, but he will tear up against a main key defender on ground level, too quick for them. Once he hits like 23 or 24 years old, I think he's going to be one of those X-factor key forward game changers. His biggest weakness, I would say, is his inconsistency, but we won't have to worry about that because it's so unlikely he drifts to our first pick anyway. Connor O'Sullivan, I really like this guy. I think if he is on the board come pick 11, it's a godsend. There is a clear top 10 or 11 and he is inside it. He is a very tall key defensive option, probably going to grow to be 2 meters tall. He is so underrated as well. Coaches love this guy. He makes teams better. He was actually the best and fairest winner in the Allies champ winning campaign, and that is in a team where we have Colby McKercher, Riley Sanders, Jed Walter, who are all tipped to be picked ahead of him. He is really versatile, shows he can swing to different areas on the field, really impactful with other contests, really hard to beat in the air, and he's either going to outmark you or bring the ball to ground, which I really like in a defender. Very athletic too. I would say he is the prototype modern day key defender. Sometimes he will get caught out away from his direct opponent, but the pros outweigh the cons. I think it would be worth getting him even though we have developing key backs in our team, if he is available, that is. At pick 11, it's unlikely, but we'd have to take him. He's too good to pass on at that range. James Leake, maybe a bit of a bolter in some eyes, but I really rate this guy. He is a Tassie prospect, general defender. I think with Heppel soon to retire, this is a no-brainer. He's close to 190 centimeters, so he's not going to get bullied. He will early in his career because he's lean, but it won't be an issue in a few years' time. But he's such a clever defender, really high footy IQ, super smart player. You rarely see him make the wrong decision, and he has great skills to match as well. He's also really strong mentally. He wasn't even on draft boards at the start of the year. He was barely in first teams, but he improved so much out of sight to become a first round draft option. I think whatever club picks him up is lucky. Great skills, great footy smarts, pretty versatile as well. He's played midfield and even forward a bit. I like him down in defence. There is that Tassie go home factor in a few years, but I would like him until then. And finally, another option for our first pick is Darcy Wilson. Now, some would be a bit confused by us picking up another outside midfielder. I can see him playing wing, even though our depth there is fairly fruitful, but best available option if Caddy and O'Sullivan are gone, it's Darcy Wilson. He is arguably a top 10 draftee now. His athleticism is brilliant. He was so good at the combine. He impacts the scoreboard so well. He has an unreal tank on him. The guy can run all day. He's a bit like Nick Martin in that he can play as an attacking mid or winger. Drift forward, obviously not on Martin's level right now, but it's not silly to suggest he won't overtake him at some stage in his career. The guy's going to be a first round draftee. If we're going for best available options, I'm sure Darcy Wilson will be the best by the time our first pick comes about. Might not need another outside mid, but it's also a risk of letting another club take him. On to the second round picks. Pick 31 will drift down a bit with some matched bids. Logan Morris, another undersized key forward, very different to Caddy though. He isn't mobile. His running capacity is a lot weaker, but he is built around strength. Terrific one-on-one marker, really strong in his hips, clean hands in the contest, and he is a brilliant kick of the footy. I know people want that. He nails his set shots. This is the type of forward you won't see move around the ground too much. You want him around goals. He has that genuine scoreboard impact, but he isn't going to take a number 1 key defender. He is too short for that. Not far past 190 centimeters, but like Langford, too dangerous to be left unattended. I like him a lot. Luamon Lual. Now, I am expecting Hawthorn Academy product Tao Jath to be taken at before this pick. If he isn't, I would love him, but Lual is a really similar type of player. He bases his game off Tao Jath's brother CJ from Hawthorn. He is a rangy attacking halfback, 182 centimeters, but feels taller, probably due to his athleticism. He has a good leap on him, good aerial presence, but his game is built around his speed. He is so athletic, so fast. He links up really well. He runs with ball in hand. He isn't afraid to take on a player, which I like. He is a typical X-Factor rebound defender. He isn't the best ball user, not the smartest at times either, but he is really aggressive with his play. It makes sense for us to take a punt on a rebound defender because we don't really have much in terms of general defensive youth. I also have Angus Hastie down here as well. Really similar player to Lual. He is a lot taller though, a bit less agile I would think, and a little bit less athletic on face value, but I think his height is important because it gives him that intercept ability. It's a bit like Mason Redman, I guess, a taller general defender that can run with speed and rebound effectively. Attacking halfback to think about at this stage if he is on the ball. I see a lot of potential there, and like I said with Lual, we need young defenders to aid our developing key backs. I would love to see one of these guys play through the VFL and develop. I think Hastie or Lual, either way, I like them both. And finally, for pick 31 options, I have Ashton Moir, South Aussie. This is a massive risk. For starters, his trade value is unknown. Some would have him near 20, some would have him near pick 40. He is arguably one of the top 10 most naturally gifted players in the draft. He famously can kick about 60 meters on both feet. Rare to see players without a preferred foot. He is really classy, really clever. Time seems to just stop around him. He is athletic as well. He is a good mover for a forward. Good, strong mark. I struggle to find players with a ceiling as high as Moir. I genuinely think if he puts it together, he could be anything. The issue is he is just about the most inconsistent player in the draft. It's super frustrating. He rarely puts all his skills together for a good game. He has shown glimpses, many glimpses, but rarely manages to completely tear games apart like he should. And that will be the story for a while. I can imagine him kicking a small bag early in his career and then going on to be goalless for a half dozen weeks. He is a huge risk, really big risk. He could be anything, but he could also be a flop. I think it's a risk worth taking, though. You watch his highlights, he makes really hard acts look effortless. I reckon every club has pondered taking him with their draft picks. Alrighty, so pick 35 is not far later than pick 31, so these players are in a very similar bracket in terms of quality, which makes it easier. Taylor Goad is a super raw ruckman. He comes from a basketball background, 206 centimeters, almost 100 kegs. The guy is not a great footballer. I will start off by saying that. His skills and craft aren't anything special, but it's the Sam Draper kind of thinking. He's so competitive and aggressive, really athletic, that basketball athleticism. He's really strong, big boy, doesn't need to do much more gym work, I would say. He will take time to learn the craft and hone in on his skills like Draper has and is still doing, but there is genuine upside there. He is an athlete. An athlete like this has to be considered, especially because we only have 3 rucks at the moment and one of them is 35. Brian is starting to play senior footy more. Could be a good time to throw in another 18-year-old for the future and start playing senior footy when Draper is nearing 30. From a ruck to a key defender, I haven't really spoken about many or any since Connor O'Sullivan. It's not a great draft for them after the first round or so. There's a bunch in the first round, but after then it's pretty hard to find any. Zane Zakostelsky is pretty unproven. It's actually hard to know if he will slide to this stage, but his footy hasn't been that eye-catching. He isn't that skillful. He isn't that solid as a defender. He has shown he can be pretty far from consistent, pretty leaky, but he is the most athletically gifted in the draft, or at least he was at the National Combine. He was in the top 10 for individual testing for 4 out of the 5 categories. He is fast, agile, he has elite endurance, he has the athletic capabilities to be a modern day key defender. It's worth at least a thought if he's still on the board. He has lots of time to grow into a player, much like Taylor Goad, who I just spoke about. From a key back to a key forward, Luke Lloyd. It's not a very good draft for key forwards either, or for key forward depth at least. I actually think there's a chance Luke Lloyd could fall outside pick 45 or even go earlier. It's hard to know with players this late in the draft, but if we are looking at options to take from a positional aspect, Lloyd is a key forward who will most likely be available, and he has risen the rankings a bit in recent weeks. Injuries delayed his season, but he recently won the grand final with Sandringham in the Coates Talent League. He was a really important player there. He is more of a venture up the ground kind of key forward, link up strong mark vibes, really smart leading player, good mark, good kick as well. I like him around the centre for open play if we are exiting defence. He won't be close to goal, but his scoreboard impact isn't a weakness either. He can kick goals. He has shown that. I think he's less mobile than others I have spoken of, certainly less athletic than the recent names I have spoken of, but a much smarter and more skillful footballer. And finally, to end the video, I have Will Brown, big-bodied inside mid, 194 centimeters, taller than some of the key positional players I've spoken of. He is just a brute, really. He isn't that skillful, he isn't that classy, but he gets in and under, gets the job done. Now, he was the Sandringham captain. They obviously won the grand final, and he was the best on ground in that grand final. He played up forward as he has done at times in that match, kicked a small bag of goals. That's good. It shows he steps up in big games. He can play a number of different roles, steps up in big moments as well. And the fact he captained the side, I like that too. He's a player that would be a safe pick, I reckon. You would back him into play footy. Not going to be an early delisting like Alistair Lloyd or those other players, but I think his upside is a bit lower than most of the players I've discussed in this video. But that is that little draft preview of sorts, I guess, highlighting a few handy players we might have a look at. Let me know what you think of these guys down below. Comment someone else you want to see us pick up at the draft. But that's all. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans.